Awesome. So we're going to get started. We don't have a whole lot of content this morning. Guessing that most of you already create campus vouchers. So this is a new feature that we're going to be talking about for creating a reusable template for those vouchers. So I'm Jackie Treschel with the Connect Carolina Change Management Team. I also have Becky Arnold and Krishna Bhimareddy who are with us. So if we have some questions at the end as well. So the format of our webinar today, we're going to do a presentation. Again, there's not a whole lot of new content. It's just a new feature that is going to look very similar to you when we get into it. And then we'll do some question and answer at the end. If you have questions, you can use the chat window to type it. I also have Chris Minner in the room. Some of you probably know him if you took the voucher class at some point in the last year or so. You probably had him doing the training. So he's going to be moderating and capturing your questions during the webinar, and then we'll answer them at the end in the order they were received. We are recording the webinar this morning, and it will be posted on the Finance Budgets page of CC Info once it's all uploaded and ready to go. So that being said, a little housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the new template option for campus vouchers. And basically there's three different parts of that. We're going to talk about how to create the template, how to use a template to create a campus voucher, and how to make changes to the template. Going into this, we're assuming that you have a certain bit of knowledge already of using the vouchers. So we're not going to go into how to create a full voucher, just how to apply the template. So with that being said, before we even start, there's a couple of big things to remember when you're working with these templates. The first one is that creating a template is almost the same as creating a voucher. Again, when I get into it, you're going to be like, oh, I know exactly how to do this. The second thing, and this is kind of a big thing, we'll talk about why, but the system stores the template with the vendor. So when you get into using the template to create a voucher, you're going to pull it up based on who the vendor is. And again, we're going to get to that. And the last big thing is when you're using the template, at a minimum, you're going to have to enter 3 fields when you're using that template to create a voucher going forward. So all of that being said, let's get into creating a template. Everybody knows this screen, I'm assuming. The menu path is here. So finance menu, accounts payable, voucher, add update, and campus voucher entry. I'm assuming if you are creating vouchers on a regular basis, you probably have this saved as a favorite as well. So on the add a new value tab, as of this morning, you have this option here that says template voucher under voucher style. So you're going to make sure that that's selected, and then you're going to fill in the other information on the add a new value tab. Some people go straight to save, to add, and pull up the voucher. Other people will go ahead and fill the information in here so that it pre-populates on the next page. I know when I was doing a lot of vouchers, I filled in information here because it was easier to use it on this screen. So you can see I've already put in a vendor name, and it pulled up the vendor ID and the location as well, the invoice date, and then the invoice amount that I would typically be using for this vendor. And then I'm going to click Add, which takes me to the Invoice Information tab. Again, this looks familiar to you. You see there the vendor ID information is populated. We have Stacy Trainwell, who is a graduate student that we're creating a stipend for. So this stipend needs to be paid monthly, and so I have to create multiple vouchers for her. So what I'm doing is creating that template so that I can pull it later. Again, you see the invoice lines are already pulled in, and because I'm ahead of the game, I actually put the chart field string in already as well. And you'll see down in the center section, there is a new template section that you didn't see before today. In that section is the template ID and the description. So the template ID, In theory, you can name that whatever you want. However, we want to encourage you to use the template ID naming standard that I have shown on the screen now, which is just using your 6-digit department number. The reason for that is, in this case, for Stacy Trainwell, I'm likely only going to have one template. She's going to get paid from the same chart field string over and over again. That's not a big deal. But templates are the same as vouchers in that anybody can see them that has voucher access. So when you go to pull up your template for, say, Panera, if you're doing catering orders, you're going to see all of the templates that anybody else has created for Panera. So in order to make it so that the template is useful to you, and you're not having to modify it, what we encourage is that you just use your 6-digit department number for those type of vendors that other people would also be using. And then if you have more than one, for example, if you use Panera, but you do a lunch and you do a breakfast once a week, but you pay for them with different chart field strings, then use a dash and the number to differentiate those. So you would use your -1, -2, and so on. That way it makes it easier when you go to search for it. A big thing here is that, and we'll talk about this when we get to modifying a template, you're able to modify all of the fields on a template except for the template ID. So once you set your template ID, it is there for eternity. Maybe not really that long, but probably. So we wanted to keep that as a standard as much as we can. So I'm entering my template ID. In this case, this is the department number we're using. And then your template description. That can be up to 30 characters, so you can be more specific here. In this case, it's a student stipend, so that's just what I'm calling it. And you'll see that the invoice number at the student stipend. When you go to search for these templates in different locations, it pulls the different columns. So, but because we have more flexibility with the template description, you can put something else in there that's a little longer and a little more descriptive to make it easier for searching. So I've got all of that information in there. And now, those 3 fields that I said when you create a template, when you create a voucher with a template that you have to fill in are invoice date, invoice number, and category. So now you're asking me, well, Jackie, why do I have to put invoice date and category in before I can save this? So the system requires that you have an invoice date and you have a category in order to save the template. Just like in order to save a voucher, you have to have that information in there. To submit a voucher, you have to have it in there, but it's not going to pull up when you do the template later. So we put that information in there. And again, there's our chart field string. With the templates, you can do as much information in there or as little information as you want. So in this case, I'm doing everything because I know that the repeating payment to Stacy Trainwell is going to be this $952, and this is the chart field string that we're going to be using. Once all of that is entered, I click Save. Just like when I'm creating a voucher, I get a warning message that tells me that I have to attach the documentation before I can submit for approval. You can't submit templates. All you can do is create them and save them. You're not submitting anything for approval or anything like that. It's just storing it in the system. So here you click OK and you're done. And that's all you have to do to create your template voucher. So again, just like creating a regular voucher, you just need to make sure you have your template ID, your description, and the date and the category in there so that it lets you save. So now I've got my template created. It's time to pay Stacy. So let's talk about how to use that template to create a voucher. I'm back to the same menu path with the add a new value. This time I'm going to choose regular voucher to create it. And I'm going to look up my vendor, which again is Stacy Trainwell. So it populated her information here. And I'm going to click add because I know on my template, I already put in the invoice amount. And I could do the date here or I could do it on the next screen. So after I click add, it goes to the invoice information. Again, you see that her information is populated. And down in the middle part of the voucher, there's also a field on your regular vouchers now that says copy from source document. And you see it says copy from template. So when you click go, it will take you to this voucher template screen, and it will give you the option to copy. In this case, I only have one template, so I can type in the template ID, or you can click the magnifying glass to look up the template. Again, in this case, I already know my template ID was my department number, and it pulls up that it's student stipend. And then when I click copy from template, it's going to go into the invoice information, and it's going to pull all of that information from my template over. You can see here the amount pulled in, the description pulled in down here, the chart field pulled down, just like I had it on the template originally. Again, you see category, invoice date, and invoice number are not filled in. But in order to submit this, I'm going to have to get those filled in. So again, there's a reminder that those three fields, at a minimum, you're going to have to enter on every voucher that you do with a template. So after you do that, you want to make sure to remember to check the fields that they're the ones that you want and that they are accurate. And then that's it. I'm going to go back here. So that's all there is to using the template once you have it pulled up to use on the voucher. So you would save, submit, attach your documentation like you normally do, and then just run it through the process and send it on to approvals as needed. So the last thing that's new, because the templates are new, is modifying a template. Again, we're back to the same menu path, accounts payable and vouchers. And this time you're going to do a search under voucher style for template voucher. Right now it's easy because there aren't a whole lot of template vouchers out there. As people are using these, you probably want to narrow this down a little bit when you get into it and not just do a search for all the template vouchers. So to narrow the search results, remember I told you that the template is stored with the vendor. So you want to enter the vendor ID here, or you can enter the vendor name, look it up, to pull your vendor to narrow the search results. So in this case, this is our Stacy Trainwell, who's getting that stipend. So that's who I'm searching for. When I do a search, these are the search results it brings me back up, and I can see on the invoice number, there's the student stipend. You notice that the template ID and the description do not show on this field. So that's why it's important to match the invoice number when you create the template to the description so that you're able to pull it up easily. Again, for students, for vendors that there aren't a whole lot of people that are using, it's a little bit easier to find those templates. But when we get into some of the catering suppliers like Panera, there's likely to be hundreds of them as we go along. So when I click on that one, it brings me back to my template. This is all the information that we saved originally. And here we can make changes to any of the fields except the template ID in the template. So after you make the changes, you click save and you've updated your template. So let's just wrap up the important points here. The first thing is a reminder that templates are stored with the vendors. So you do have to pull up the vendor in order to apply the template when you use the campus voucher. The template IDs cannot be changed once a template has been saved. If you follow the naming standards, it makes searching easier as we go along. All the fields on the template except for the template ID can be changed. And at a minimum, you'll need to fill in 3 fields when creating a template. When you're creating a voucher using the template, you'll have to fill in the invoice number, the invoice date, and the category. And that's actually all I have. And now do we have some questions?
Jackie,
Chris?
we do have some questions. Okay, so let me scroll back here. So the first one is from Michael. Regarding template naming, can we use department ID and vendor name?
So there's not really a need to use the vendor name because it's stored with the vendor. So when you do a search for Panera, you'll pull up all of the templates for Panera. So there's not really a need to use that.
Okay, we have another question from Alyssa. Why can't category value be saved in the template? That isn't going to change for most things that we would use the template.
The category is a custom field that we build on top of the voucher page. So that's why it cannot be copied over. The copy template function is a delivered function, and the category for the field is a custom field. So unfortunately, that doesn't get copied.
Okay, we have a question from Anne. Will the category enter after pulling in the template overwrite the account?
That is a good question, Anne. I think we may have stumped us.
Will it override an account? We'll check on that.
So Krishna's checking on that one. We'll come back to that one.
All right, while he's at work on that, Hala has a question. I think that's Hala. Can I delete a template I've created?
You cannot delete a template. You can modify the template, again, except for the department ID or the template ID, but you cannot delete the template. So what you can do if you need to use a template for something else, and this is helpful if you've only used the department number as the template ID, is you can go in, you can change the vendor for the template and store it that way, but you can't actually do a full-scale delete and get rid of it.
Okay, we have another question from Sheila. Can a template be used for single payment vouchers?
This is for the campus vouchers only, so I'm not really sure how the single payment vouchers are requested. If they're requested through campus vouchers, then the answer is yes.
Okay. We have a question from Robin. Can the chart field string be changed?
Absolutely. Every field except for that template ID can be changed. And once you when you pull the template up, you can even change the vendor. So if you have a template pulled up to pay stipends and you have another student that you want to use the same information, you can change the vendor once you've pulled up the template. It's just that the way the system stores the templates, it's with the vendor. But you can change any of the fields when you're using it to create a campus voucher.
Okay, we have a question from Justin. Can you search for a template with the voucher ID and template ID with a wildcard, like a % sign?
Yeah, you should be able to search with the wildcard. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Priya. If a user has access to all the templates, does it mean that they can change other people's templates?
Yes, that is absolutely what that means. So we want to make sure that we are using our own templates, or if we use somebody else's template, that we're not modifying that template.
And that's where the recommendation, Jackie, that you made on the naming convention would help, so you wouldn't stumble on other people.
That you're not pulling it. Exactly.
Okay, we have a comment from Janet Rupert. She says, please be aware that template naming conventions are different from invoice numbers. When creating the actual voucher, the invoice naming convention needs to follow the normal naming convention, such as train well, and then the amount concatenated with the date, just like you guys have always been taught to do.
Thank you for that, Janet. And that's one of those things. We use the invoice number for the template. It's only because when you do a search, if you're going to modify the template, that's the only real identifier of that template that pulls up there. But yes, this doesn't overwrite the standards for when you're creating a campus voucher. And again, invoice number is one of those fields that does not pull in with the template. So it's one that you have to add in anyway.
Right, especially in case of stipends, they have particular naming convention on the invoice number, and that rule does not change.
Right.
Okay, we have a question from Carol. Would you recommend using the naming convention as part of that invoice number, reimbursements to individuals?
No, I think that's what Janet was just saying before, was that the invoice number naming convention, when you're creating a campus voucher for stipends, stays the same as it always has been. This doesn't change that. This is solely for the template invoice number. But when you're creating the voucher to submit for approval for someone to get paid, then it does need to be in accordance with the standards that are already in place.
Okay, we have a question from Lindsay. Are the templates labeled with who created them?
I do not believe.
I'm looking at the campus voucher page, and on the summary, I believe it gives their information on who created and who last modified.
Okay, so it is on the summary page, but not in the search fields.
Right.
When you pull up a template.
Okay, so we have Anne who has answered the question. Anne is with Krishna. For the category pulling in, will it overwrite the account? She says that the answer is yes, it will overwrite the account pulled in from the template.
Okay, so when you want to make sure to do that and double check that when you add in the category code that if it changes the account, that's the one you mean for it to be.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay. Well, I think we have a little bit of a little brief respite from the questions. If you have more questions, please go ahead and type them in. Do you guys have anything else to add while we're waiting on questions, or?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I'm going to reiterate what Jackie said. 3 things: invoice number, invoice date, the category code that needs to be entered. Please follow the naming conventions. It's going to help you when we have a lot of templates out there and you need to pull the template that applies to your department. So that naming convention is very important. And as we said before, the naming convention for the invoice number, especially for student stipends, is not changing. You still have to follow the same convention.
And again, this is really just an option. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. If you're used to doing it a certain way, this is not something that you're required to use. This is solely an option to help make it easier for you if you're entering multiple invoices and multiple vouchers for the same vendor. Or you're doing it over and over again. Those of you that have those student stipends that are due early January and you have to do them all at one time, this should make it a lot easier for you. But again, this isn't something that you need to do.
Okay, we did get another question here. Can this be used for cash advances?
I'll have to circle back with disbursements on that, on how that's handled today. This applies to campus vouchers. So anything that's done through campus vouchers today, you can use the template vouchers.
Okay, Michael, well, he's just saying thank you for this. This will be very useful. So Michael's praising us.
Thanks, Michael.
Yes, thanks, Michael. We like those. Carol asks, is there a limited number of characters you can use in the naming convention?
For the template ID, yes. There are 10 characters for the template ID, and the description and the invoice number are 30 characters each.
I just got an answer from Disbursement Services. The answer is no for the cash advances.
Okay.
All right. So no on the cash advances.
All right. And we got Lindsay. Oh, she just says thank you so much. This will be helpful. Thank you, Lindsay. Cool.
Any other questions?
Tanya says, in question, so Tanya asked, can this be used for cash advances? Now she's following up with, even though they go through vouchers. So we said no on the cash advances, they're just telling them not to use it. But she's saying, even though we're using vouchers, why couldn't we do that?
We can follow up with Disbursement Services. And do we have the email ID or contact for the person?
I've got their name. I can write it down. We can get back with it.
Tanya, we'll follow up with you separately on that question.
Oh, she just sent her email to us. So
Great. Thank you.
I'll jot it down here. If I can grab your pen real quick. Thanks. If you got any more questions, we still got some time here. If you want to go ahead and send us an email.
All right. I think we'll wait another 30 seconds or so in case anyone has more questions.
I just want to mention one other thing on the template vouchers. It can be split between multiple distributions. So if there are multiple chart fields like 50-50 on two different departments or accounts, that can be done on the templates. Any number of lines can be created, any number of distributions can be created on the template, and everything will get copied over.
Great. Thank you. I forgot to include that in there. Yes. So one other thing, and I've sort of alluded to it as we went through, but this functionality is live in the system now. So it should have been there this morning when you got to work. Or if you're not at work, it's still there. So you can go in and create templates starting now.
Okay, we have a question from Kim. I have anywhere from 25 to 50 invoices every month that only differ by date, amount, and invoice number. Will this quicken my time?
It should. There's likely to be some work on the front end to create those templates. And I'm assuming they all go to the same vendor, but you'd be able to pull up the template each time and just add in the invoice date, the amount, and the number, and send it through. If the chart field string is all the same, you'll be able to just pull it up and do it just as quickly as I did there, and submit. Again, you do still need to attach your documentation. Nothing about the voucher process is changing. This is just on the front end. Instead of entering all of that information, this allows you to have that pre-populated for you once you've set the templates up.
Okay. And then Kim says, thank you. This will be a huge time saver for me. So
great.
Yay.
That's what we were hoping for.
All right. So feel free to keep hitting us with the questions. We'll hang on for a minute here or so until we're pretty sure that no one else is curious.
Yeah, while we're waiting on questions, let me also mention that if you're creating multiple templates, you can copy a template into a template. Like if all the chart fields are the same, you just need to change the description or the other vendor. So that can be easily created. You don't have to create all those 10 chart fields again. You can copy it from an existing template.
Great to know.
We have a question from Robert. When will the recording of this information be available?
As soon as we can get it to CC Info, potentially this afternoon, but definitely by Monday sometime.
So we have another question from Beth. Will something similar be available for cash receipts?
We need to follow up on that. This feature is exclusively for campus vouchers. We got to see if there's anything similar available on the cash receipts. We'll note it down and look into it.
We'll add it to the wish list. All right.
All right. If you have anything you're still thinking of, don't be shy. Send us some question, and we'll try to answer it for you. All right, here we go. Mark says, will the voucher student guide be updated to include template information in the near future?
Absolutely. the hope was that it would be done for this afternoon. It may also be Monday before, but the voucher guide will be updated. We'll have a separate, we're creating a separate handout guide for right now to add in. So it'll be separate now. It'll add into the campus voucher guide as well. And it is going to be on the online help, again, hopefully this afternoon. So if you're in Connect Carolina and wondering about it, you can go to the online help and do a search for the template voucher, and you should be able to find it.
Yeah, and we usually, just more than you want to know, but we usually run the online help at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you go in, say 3 o'clock, it should be there by then.
Yeah, on Fridays.
On Fridays.
Right.
All right. All good questions. You guys are curious. If you got anything else, just let us know.
We'll wait another minute or so. All right. Looks like we're good.
All right.
So if you do have any questions, do let us know. You can reach us. What's the best way? Probably if you have questions, you can email cc_communications@unc.edu and we'll get it. And or you can always reach out to the help desk, the 962 help, and get your questions answered that way. And again, all of this information, the webinar, the student guides, they'll all be updated and put on to CC Info, again, hopefully later this afternoon, or it'll be there on Monday. So hope this works. Hope you enjoy it, and have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.